will say that our business is stronger than it has ever been.
The success of growth and where I see companies growing consistently really is your people.
I mean, the story is not, does it make power? Because they all make power. The story is, what does it power?
This is what solar installers need to know with your host, Hervé Billier and Joe Marhamati.
Hi there, it's Hervé and Joe with what solar installers need to know, where we interview solar CEOs and experts on how they run their business on the solar coaster. We ask their private revenue numbers, we give actionable advice, and learn about trade secrets so you can run and grow your solar business. Joe and I built a solar company from 0 to 12 million in sales and got successfully acquired. If you'd like to do the same or do better, go to sungrow.com/blog to get actionable behind-the-scenes lessons on running and growing your solar business. And now, without further ado, let's jump right into the next episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What Solar Installers Need to Know. Today my guest is a general manager of Arch O&M, the dedicated operations and maintenance division of Arch Electric, one of Wisconsin's largest and most respected solar companies, founded in 2003. What makes Michael unusual, his background before running a commercial solar O&M business unit, he spent his career applying Lean Six Sigma and organizational leadership principles to complex field operations. And now he's bringing that thinking to solar. Michael Schwarz, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Hervé. It's an honor to be a part of the show here, and I think we've got a great topic here for us to discuss.
Absolutely. So maybe walk us first through what a commercial solar O&M contract actually covers. What are the services that you provide?
Sure. So when we approach a solar O&M contract, we're looking at that whole system, that whole array. So there's ancillary benefits or services. When we think about vegetation management, that's a big topic when we're in these larger solar fields that maybe are not on a rooftop and they're out in a solar field. So we partner with subcontractors based upon our geography in the Midwest, understanding what is required from a vegetation management standpoint. Now that's some of the I think the big impact things that over the course of summer can really make a huge negative impact, right, on either the aesthetics or the production of that asset. But overall, commercial wise, when we're thinking about those larger systems, we're really looking at it from a two-phased approach. What are the preventative items that we can take care of to get ahead of those corrective issues? In a commercial O&M contract, it's pretty standard for us to define up front what is considered corrective, what is considered preventative maintenance, just because those two go hand in hand. We always want to prevent that following piece. So when I'm thinking about preventive maintenance on the larger commercial fields, we're thinking about what's the right schedule for those right assets, depending upon what equipment is on a field, whether that's the modules or the inverters and what tracking systems they have, are all things we're considering when putting together that preventative maintenance lunch menu, as I would call it. Common pieces in that lunch menu, you're going to have your IV curve traces, you're going to have your IR scans. We are going to look at the inverters, what servicing can be done on those. Is there any warranty issues with past experiences at other sites? That's looking at more the day-to-day piece of it. How do we help with that, not being on site is really making sure we have a good monitoring platform set up and that we have a good solution to notify us in a timely manner when something does go awry, whether that's automatic or whether that's part of our ROC solution.
What's your smallest and what's your biggest installation you have on a contract?
Yeah, so we will do a lot of the smaller ones. So if you got 100 kW, those are some of the smaller sites. Really, I think our sweet spot is from 1 megawatt up to 10 megawatts. Mm-hmm. Right now, our largest single site in our portfolio is 20 megawatts. So that seems to be kind of that good sweet spot, and it's very manageable. And we look at our skill sets and our practices and SOPs, they really adhere to that solar size system. And that seems to work very well for us.
Okay. What about thermal imaging and drones flying over to check things up? You guys use it already?
Yes, thermal imaging and drones is part of the standard practice. What's nice about the preventative program is probably much like other folks is we do have some options, right? It's not a one size fits all. It is a lunch menu. But thermal imaging just seems to be a very effective way to see the health of the system, where there might be defects or where there's areas that need further review that we can't always see with the naked eye, or are we going to spend the labor checking each individual piece, right? That allows us to kind of utilize some efficiency and get ahead of some of those issues or downtime.
Okay. What about trackers specifically, or maybe first about trackers, like you do like regular maintenance and greasing and checking things for structural issues, or what's the maintenance on that kind of equipment?
Yeah, so the trackers right now, we're kind of handling manufacturer by manufacturer. Not all trackers are created equal. There's a number of different topologies out there, but really what we're doing either in a preventive maintenance or through site walks is we're looking at the health of it. Any of those moving parts is going to be an opportunity for a failure. So when we're looking at some of the hinge points on top of the posts, are those bolts remaining torqued? Is everything in the same location? Do we see any stress on torque tubes? Are some of the common items we're looking for. In addition, I mean, you have a tracker system out in this field moving, and it's out there in Mother Nature. So some days are beautiful days and it's working great. Some days have storms, some days have snow, some days have rain, what have you. Now you've got this big integral system that's constantly moving. So there's always going to be failure points. So we're really reviewing that whole system top to bottom, looking at slew drives, looking at those drive shafts, looking at the weather stations, right? Is there a sensor that we have to make sure is set up appropriately so it doesn't go into stow mode when the vegetation management gets too high? So really, we're looking through that whole system from front to back, and we do have a customized checklist for each manufacturer because we tried the one size fits all, but it doesn't always. It's a good guideline, but doesn't always work that way.
No, and the checklist on the commercial that we looked at, I mean, those checklists become pretty long. My experience with some developers are some of them are like very, very picky, and other developers are a bit less picky. I assume your clients are developers, or are they like asset owners, or who's a typical client that you work with?
It's a little bit of both. So we have some owners, and we typically have probably more of the asset managers. And really, I think from requirement standpoint, we look at our customer base. It is all over the board. What we've tried to do is create a standard list out of that really is all encompassing from cradle to grave, looking at all the details. And I think what our team has learned along that journey is, really having it broke down piece by piece on those trackers, whether we're looking at the knuckles, the drive shafts, the slew drives, what have you. But that granularity has been able to give us a very good operating procedure when going on those sites, just to make sure that we're connecting all the dots. Because what we don't want to do is do multiple visits. We'd love to go there in one visit, get that done, and optimize that travel time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's speak about Lean Six Sigma. I think you spend your career applying lean and operational excellence to manufacturing and industrial environments. And so what made you bring that toolkit to the solar O&M business?
Well, I think what's very interesting about it is, right, lean as a whole is all about value mapping, right? What value does a service or product bring to what market? And what's the best way to create flow to make it happen? So when I think about the solar market, it seems like it's a little bit newer market, maybe than your traditional industrial manufacturing. In industrial manufacturing, everything kind of maybe seems straightforward. What I've seen in solar O&M is we have some best practices, we have some strategies, but do we have the whole value stream mapped out? And where are the gaps in that value stream? So what Lean Six Sigma has really been able to, teach me is what's the value stream process. Now applying that same toolbox in solar O&M is overall, it's a very similar process. You have a product life start, product life end, and then you've got the product life in there. And from a service perspective, you're ultimately applying, how do I apply the best service on this piece of equipment that, is going to have scheduled downtime and unscheduled downtime? And what are the gaps or service failures for us to get there?
So maybe let's dig a bit more deeper, maybe a concrete example, like how do you apply Lean Six Sigma principles to a team of solar technicians? And then they're also traveling 75% of the time. So how do you apply? When you came in, did you do the value mapping? And do you remember some special
statistics?
Moments?
Yeah. So I think one of the fun pieces is you look at other service industries, maybe as a benchmark. So as I came aboard, trying to understand, what does HVAC companies do? What do car service shops do? And high level, there might be a similar process there or a similar framework. Really coming to the solar world and looking at that process map and saying, okay, what's time that we're working and non-working, looking at where the geography is. And very quickly in that value stream, you could see that there's a large geography area. And what's different about, like, say, the automobile industry is the car comes to the service shop, right? In this case, we got to take our service shop to the car. So even through our practices last year, as we put this value stream together, it was very, very evident very quickly that we're spending a ton of time behind a steering wheel instead of behind a computer or behind a wrench or in that field. So very quickly, what came out of our value stream was a KPI around percentage of travel time versus work time. And now that we are monitoring it, we're aware of it, and we continue to improve that just because I wouldn't want to pay someone to be driving around a vehicle if I owned my own solar farm.
So what are some solutions? You have teams kind of more spread out depending on where you have larger contracts, or you give them faster cars? Like what are some
So really what that strategy boiled down to us is trying to do more talent set by geography. So we look at where we're attacking new sales. We're trying to stay within our same parameters, the same field from a geography standpoint, and grow our density. That also was layered in with our training program. So we have our own internal Arch Academy for tech level 1 through 4. What we try to do is make sure there's a good blend of that support of technicians 1 through 4 within a given geography, just to give us that flexibility so that if we need to plan maybe more strategic milk runs where we're leaving on Monday and coming back on Friday, that's the only way for us to optimize that travel time. The unfortunate piece is our technicians spend more time away from home, right? So we haven't quite got there yet, but as we build our density based upon that KPI, the expectation is we can start to reduce that travel time versus work time.
All right. Well, let's speak about KPI. So clearly one travel time is a KPI you're tracking. Do you track something else in the commercial O&M division?
Yeah, and we track a ton. We've got a ton of internal KPIs. I think that the biggest, most meaningful one at the end of the day is going to come down to $1 per watt for those systems. We're tracking a lot of uptime and downtime. Those are important pieces in lost production. That falls maybe more on the reactive side. So the reactive side, your uptime and your downtime, your percentage, I think is one of the higher, more valuable KPIs. On the preventative side, I'm just looking at that cost per watt, right? What does it take for us to go out there to do a preventive maintenance? Because if we're doing it right and we're hitting that target and weather's fair to us, right, we should prevent or reduce those reactive maintenance pieces. So the one I've always continued to resonate with was a dollar per watt metric.
We also added in your Sunvoy portal a lost energy production last month and lifetime. So you have that too. You can use that as an extra KPI. And then also you wanted to have weather adjusted data. So we also have that now to check the estimated production, right? That comes from your contract or your design tool. And then the weather adjusted data is like that estimated with the weather factor. And so you see if you underproducing, if you produce less than designed, maybe just because of the weather. So that takes that variable out of it too. I think a lot of people listening are interested in the O&M part because it's a recurring revenue stream. What do they not understand about what it actually takes to do it well?
Yeah, it is a recurring revenue stream. Finding the happy balance between preventative and corrective, right, is that magical crystal ball solution. So the preventative piece, if we can get out there and proactively have a schedule, great. Right. We talked about travel time. We talked about uptime. All those things are very controllable. It's having a schedule put together of preventive maintenance, and then your reactive maintenance creeps. So really what that comes down to is you have to have a process developed system, but there has to be an off ramp for agility. Even the best maintained systems, weather happens, Mother Nature happens. And what we're trying to focus on from a service perspective is how do we make sure we keep that uptime? So it seems easy at 10,000 feet. I think once you start flying lower into the weeds, what you run into is those day-to-day complexities of here's the block work we have that's scheduled. Here's the unscheduled work. Here's where our technicians are. What's the greatest priority? And that's what creates our day-to-day opportunities, I'd call them.
Opportunities or headaches, depending on how you look. Well, we haven't spoken much about the sales part of maintenance, right? So you have corrective and preventative, but how do you make the case to a commercial solar owner that preventive maintenance is worth paying for? If there are large assets owners, that makes it easier because they've done this before. But do you sometimes have people that just don't understand and don't want to pay for it? How do you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. And really, I think at a high level, the biggest piece that we're looking at is at the end of the day, a solar farm is an asset, right? It costs X amount of dollars. There is not a lot of moving parts, right? In trackers, you're going to have moving parts. And ultimately, when things move, things are going to wear. Aside from that, there's still there are other electronic pieces that are heating up and cooling down more on the micro level. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's an asset that's producing value, right, through generating electricity. And when we can preventatively get to a field, that uptime is going to be that big measurement for us that makes sure that that asset is producing where it should. And then on the flip side, with the reactive maintenance, is the unfortunate cost of that is that cost of downtime. Something goes down, even if we can dispatch quickly, just because we get somebody there in a timely manner doesn't mean that we're going to be able to fix it. An inverter might have some blown IGBTs or what have you, and we have to go through an RMA process. So unfortunately, what that means for the customer is that is now sitting until we can execute the RMA process with the manufacturer, get that back on site. We require another site visit. In the meantime, especially in a time like now where we're getting into June, this is production time. You're hitting the longest days of the year. They're only getting longer for, a period here. So I think the biggest piece is just you're looking at that cash flow and what that ROI looks like. And it does cost money, but when we look at the downtime, that can cost more money.
Absolutely. Now, those technicians are on the road quite a bit. I think up to 75% of travel time. How do you hire for people like that? Because they need to have it all, right? The technical background, and yet being able to travel that much. How do you do that?
Mm-hmm. No, and then that's very tough. So at least at Arch, the approach we've taken is building out a program, Arch Academy, to help train people with the technical skills. And really what we're looking for is someone who enjoys the travel piece. Maybe doesn't have the technical, that's okay. We have a support system, and we've got Arch Academy to train you and teach you. Really just trying to find the other piece of the behavioral part of who enjoys that travel in their lifestyle. And if you leave on a Monday and come back on a Friday, we're always striving to have people home on the weekends. Solar farms do go down on the weekends, so it doesn't always work out, but it's a goal to strive towards. So it's been a very challenging journey and continues to be, because it takes a unique kind of talent set for someone to learn the technical skills, but have the ability in their schedule to travel and have the right lifestyle for that. So don't have a magic bullet for it, but our approach is focusing on how do we train people the technical part and allow others to bring their lifestyles to Arch.
So you train the technical part. Do you also train like the Lean Six Sigma methodology?
We don't really get into that. We do some value stream activities, but we haven't gotten that far down the road yet. Now, just because we don't do it now doesn't mean that's not the future of us, because, Lean Six Sigma teaches a lot of values and process. And honestly, what I've learned through my career and through my training is that right process is going to give you that right result for your customer.
I think so much in business is around processes. And when I grew up in Belgium, went to college there at university, then did some work in some engineering companies, so much was about ISO norms. It's super common in Europe. I haven't seen it much in America, maybe just because I'm not connected to it, but it seems that is like that's the way to go. I think you're familiar with ISO terminology too, right?
Yes. Yep. So my previous background is coming from manufacturing. So ISO has been a part of what I've grown up through and love to learn. And it's funny because I think depending upon who you're talking to, and you bring up the words ISO, some people get those cold sweats and they cringe. And I think it happens that way because ISO forces you down a shell and kind of in a process. Now, it's painful to get in there, but what's nice is as people move around and you cross-train or other people learn different positions of the company, if you have a solid process to come back to, then the people part isn't as big of a factor, right? At the end of the day, we want to make sure that everyone's solar farm is producing. And if we don't have a process that when one person takes off, that somebody else can't slide in there and it falls apart, that's not the best service. So what's hard is developing that process and sticking to it, right? Then you get in the fun piece of team dynamics and holding each other accountable. And hey, there's a process for that, but we didn't follow it. Why, right? Yeah. But what I've learned is it really helps steer the ship in the right direction.
But you mentioned, for example, holidays. Like I remember we came up with like a buddy holiday sheet. So if you want to go on holiday, totally fine. Just make sure you find a buddy that is not on holiday at the same time as you and can take over your roles and responsibilities. And so we kind of push it to employees to find their own kind of counterparts. Management doesn't have to do everything there. But it was kind of like, why do we have to come up with like that idea? We call it like the buddy list. And so I think the solar industry would be better served if we all had just norms to follow, because when you train to follow certain norms, or at least the norms, you can also switch companies and you can hire. There's more transparency and it's more replicable. So I think Yeah, the big question, maybe we don't have the answer, but like, why isn't there like ISO certification for solar companies?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. And maybe from a market perspective, maybe it's too new. Maybe we're just not there yet. And, in the background, you could probably really use the framework of ISO to implement that, I think, into a solar company. It's a great question. It's a great thought. We're not there yet. Maybe that's part of the journey we're on to next.
Yeah, maybe question for the audience, right? Like send us your message, let us know why it's impossible that we're the first one to think about this. So why isn't it like a certification for solar company to be ISO certified? All right, next question about your tech stack. So what is kind of some monitoring tools that you use, maybe high level or like very detailed, nitty-gritty detail level, but tell us like how do you monitor all your different assets?
Yeah, so right now we really have our monitoring combined in the Sunvoy portal. So with the sites that we have on contract, what has actually been working out very well is all of the different brands we have on one dashboard. So we can pull up a map and we can look at our customers every day and see, okay, who's green, yellow, and red. Now that at least high level monitoring is going to allow us to prioritize. So when we're looking at this giant list, we're going to be able to look at those reds first and dive into that on a daily basis. We have a person dedicated to reviewing those on a daily cadence. So the red, yellow, green, perfect way for us to prioritize. What's nice about that is you may not get the exact details, but that's going to take you out to that manufacturer's portal and we can log in and keep that troubleshooting process. But, from a flight standpoint, where we take off from the runway, we know what runway we're going to. And once we get there, we're going to see the details of what we need to dive into next. And that's really been very helpful for us because as we go down our growth path, what we don't want is 20 different portals to log into to try to figure out where the priority is. And 2 hours into it, maybe we've got an idea versus, in 2 minutes we can be there.
Yeah, it's kind of like a plug for Sunvo right there, but maybe I expected you to say like, well, we also use other tools, but the goal of Sunvo is really to have everything in one dashboard. So thanks for that. Maybe a last question about what's the single most important thing a solar installer needs to get right before trying to build a commercial O&M division? Like, I know that recurrent revenue sounds amazing. They may sell it, but then what do you need to do right before even thinking about doing it?
Yeah, I think you have to get the fundamental pieces, put together first to build a foundation to jump off of. Right. We've got, like, if you're going to play football, you've got to figure out how to block and tackle, right? If you can't block and tackle, how are you going to run offense and defense? Same kind of thing here. I think having high level understanding of roles and responsibilities, who does what, kind of in that value stream. When you think about once you set your first foot on a solar farm, what did it take to get there? What does it take to finish that job? And what does it take to get off that site? And I think what we've learned along the journey of, if it's not the process piece, which I think we've discussed quite a bit, it's also making sure you've got the right tool to facilitate that process. We have a piece of software to help us where we put our dispatch, our scheduling in. That scheduling also allows us to put customer details in with property details and then build out those assets. We've built that foundation that is allowing us to collect the good data. So data that we can see common inverter failures maybe at sites or a common inverter across multiple sites. So we have the foundational piece to have data to make decisions. So that's what I'd refer to as almost that blocking and tackling.
And I suddenly realized that maybe our first question should have been about safety, right? Always safety first. Although I think the rule of safety first, it's just mentioned because when people cut costs, usually they cut safety first.
Yeah, our approach with safety is really safety is just part of the culture. Safety isn't like a this afternoon thing or a tomorrow thing. It's an all the time thing. What we've tried to do to help promote that environment is every Tuesday, our team, we do toolbox talks where really we're just sharing best practice, whether we're looking at how to read the appropriate calorie amount on a sticker, or if there's a seasonality thing coming up. We just talked about heat stroke awareness. Right. As it's getting warmer here in the Midwest, that becomes a more and more popular thing. The hard part is you go through these different cycles, whether it's weather, whether it's tools, whether it's different sites. In the O&M world, we can never take enough time to be ahead of it because you look at our technicians is they're jack of all trades, and we're looking at all sorts of different manufacturers and different sites every day. So safety can be very redundant by us, but every Tuesday we're talking about some type of topic, whether that's something with teammates on the field or it's something we have on our rolling calendar to get ahead of.
Good. Well, thank you, Michael, for sharing your knowledge and experience in the solar industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to do the same or do better, go to sunvoy.com/blog and get actionable behind the scenes lessons on running and growing your solar business.